Hello and welcome to LionWing Talks, a weekly show where we discuss all things LionWing, tabletop games, Japanese games, and localization. I'm your host, Bradley Hailstorm, founder and president of LionWing. This is episode 16. We got a whole lot of questions to go through tonight. That's right. I have talked in the past 3 episodes how we keep either meeting or exceeding our previous week's listener submitted questions. Like 3 weeks ago, we had 19 questions submitted, which was the most questions we had ever had submitted by the community. The week after, we had 19 questions. Last week, we had 21 questions. Tonight, 44. 44. Now, that number's a little misleading because some of these questions are a little silly. But I've chosen to keep most of them in here. But we've also got some project-related questions. A good number of these questions are related to actual LionWing things. Not all of them, though. Still, 44 of them, so strap in. This is going to be one hell of a ride. After we go through our community Q&A, we're then going to jump into some project updates. I don't know if you heard, but since the last time we did this show, we announced a new game. So we'll talk about that during the project updates and also give you a status on where things are at with all of our previous games. And then we will close the show. That's our format here. I'll be monitoring the chat as always, which you know what that means. That means sometimes we'll get a question and I will quickly shift gears and answer that question. And I might go off on a little bit of tangent, which kind of gets in the way of the format sometimes. But that's also what makes it fun, which is why I invite you to join us live, watch on Twitch, ask questions in real time in the chat while I'm doing this, because you're guaranteed to get an answer from me. I really like questions on the spot. Though I'm not quite sure how much time I'm going to have for said questions. But still, I'm going to try to get to those things. Sorry, I'm looking around for my chat box here. Here we go. Let's see. Okay. Nothing in the chat right now, other than I see someone say, I might buy Sinome after I move out, so like that I'm good to go. You should definitely buy Sinome once you move out. I don't know what you're referencing when it comes to moving out, but I know what you're referencing when you say Sinome. And if I might say, perhaps I'm a bit biased, Sinome is a good game. It's a good, light, fun party game. And it's adorable. Without a doubt, I think, let's see here. I'm looking at the games behind me. So if you're just listening on audio, that's why my audio's changed. Wild Hunt Festival is a very, very, very cute game. It's adorable. The art is actually what drew me to checking out the game in the first place. I would say that Sinome is just as, if not cuter, more adorable than Wild Hunt Festival. Now, it's not fair because the two styles are very different, but hot damn, that art style in Sinome, that alone is worth the price of admission. And of course, I'm going to say that because hey, it's my company's game, but I really do mean it. If you're looking for a really, really, really cute anime game that just happens to be a shitload of fun, Sinome might have you. All right. Let's get to these questions. Question number 1. What was it about Maid Knight Saga that made you pick it as your next Kickstarter? And what was your first playthrough like? So I alluded to this during the opening. We announced a new game just this past Monday. So 2 days ago or so? It's called Maid Knight Saga. It's from a very prominent independent Japanese design studio called Laugh Sketch. And it's quite the big deal in Japan, and has been, even though it came out 2 years ago in 2019. Yeah, 2019. The game's fantastic. I'll talk more about what the game actually is later on in the project update section. So right now I'm just going to ask that you go with me on this so I can answer this question so that I can, in the interest of time. Okay, so what was the question here? Jeez, I already forgot it. What was it about Maid Knight Saga that made you pick it as your next project? Okay, yeah, so it was a combination of things. It was a combination of its visual presentation with its school life sim premise and its mechanics. So the art in Maid Knight Saga is phenomenal, like super, super good. Every game that Laugh Sketch has put out, and they've put out 3 now, plus 1 expansion, so I guess 4 in total, are all gorgeous. Gorgeous. It's kind of like what they're known for. I mean, their games are known for being, good games, but they're also known for being beautiful games. And Maid Knight Saga is no exception, let me tell you that much. So the visual presentation was very appealing. I love a good like school life sim, really like school life anything, be it an anime or light novel, video game, I don't care what it is. Like I'm into that. I'm into that genre. We don't have anything like that in our catalog, and there aren't a lot of games that exist that tackle that subject matter in the Japanese market. I mean, you've got Discipline, and Discipline's super cool, but Discipline is a different type of school-based game, very different type of school-based game. This, I really loved how it's simulating your, helping raise your student to become a provisional Maid Knight with the ultimate hope of becoming a Maid Knight. Now, Maid Knights and Maid Knight Sagas are just essentially knights that happen to be maids as well, and they take care of national security matters. So they're a big deal. They're a fighting force. They're sort of like a combat review. And that premise was really appealing to me. But then how Kagawa-san took that premise and turned it into a fun-ass game is ultimately like what sealed the deal for me. As I've mentioned in plenty of episodes in the past, and as I just mentioned before with Sainome and with Wild Hunt Festival specifically, I get drawn to games first by their art style. And in fact, I will never even touch a game, even if it's a game that is like revered, if I can't get into the box art or if I can't get into the overall art direction, which like is terrible. As I've mentioned before, like I'm know I miss out on countless games that are amazing that I'll never play because I can't get into the art style. So you've got to have something that draws me in. And Maid Knight Saga drew me in with its art style. And then once I was like, oh, that's a cool game, let me read up on what it is. The first thing I read was the premise. And I'm like, okay, yep, keep it going, baby. And then I got to the mechanics and read what type of game that it was, which was a tableau builder and card drafting and resource management and variable player powers. Fucking sign me up, right? So I read that. I'm like, I should do something about this. So I contacted Kagawa-san, who I had never talked to before. I knew Kagawa-san through a translator to some degree, but I never met with Kagawa-san himself. And so I reached out and said, hey, I don't know what you got going on with this game. I don't know what your plans are with it, but like, if you don't have anything happening, I would love to talk to you about an English publishing deal. And actually, I'll get into that later. I'll talk about when that project started once I get to the project updates section. If I forget, please someone in the chat remind me, because most of the time people like to hear about that kind of thing. Anyway, so art mixed with premise mixed with mechanics are ultimately what brought me to the dance, I guess you would say. And then, as I mentioned, we don't have anything like that in our catalog. Our games have a very particular style, right? They're either co-opers, they're co-op battlers, or they're competitive games. And so I had for the longest time been looking for kind of the board gamer's board game, because I really wanted to diversify our catalog. I love co-op games. I love competitive games. I love heavy thematic games like most of our games. And so, I was looking at like, all right, where are the holes in the catalog right now? And the holes in the catalog, well, it was one glaring hole, and that is we don't really have like the traditional board game experience. And so it's like, this is the traditional board game experience. It happens to be wrapped up in a very Japanese anime package. But this is like a true kind of quintessential board game. I want that for LionWing. It's time for LionWing to have that. Not to mention, I didn't want to go right back to the well of another competitive game. We just came off the heels of 2 competitive game Kickstarters. we did 2 back-to-back co-opers last year, and I'm also trying to be mindful of what I know is coming and, in the near future. And so you've always got to kind of balance your genres so that you're not cannibalizing your market by releasing too many of the same game, because then you have diminishing returns on each one. So, yeah, I guess all of those factors are what drew me to the game. My first playthrough of the experience was a really, really positive one. It was fun, it was uncomplicated, and it was competitive. So I've mentioned before how I hate reading rule books, which some people would say, this probably isn't the industry for you. I hate rule books. I just don't have the attention span to usually sit down with a really thick one and get through it in one sitting. I just can't do it. I wish I could, but I can't. I also, even if a rule book's short, if it's dense or poorly written, then I struggle with that as well. That was not the case with Maid Knight Saga. Maid Knight Saga's rulebook is concise, it's well organized, it's got nice images, it's self-explanatory. The cards have no text on them. It uses iconography for all of the card descriptions, and I loved that. Coming from Embryo Machine especially, but also Gun and Gun, there's a lot of text on those cards in those games. So to have something that is so radically the opposite of both of those experiences was very appealing to me, on top of all the other things I said were appealing about the game. So the first experience was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. It was seamless. And it was competitive. And when I'm looking at any type of non-cooperative game, or even when I'm looking at a cooperative game, those are all the things that I want. I mean, minus the competitive part if I'm looking for a co-opper, but you get the point. So my first experience was extremely positive. It was one of those times where I played my first game, I finished it, I thought about it. I don't know. I mean, I thought about it for like 2 hours and was like, all right, yep. Okay, that's the one. That's the one. So that doesn't happen with every game that I play. That hasn't happened with every LionWing game that we've published. Some games have required a little bit more of interacting with for me to get on board with it. That wasn't this one. So, when all of those elements came together, it's like I can't fight fate. This is the universe telling me that this is the game that is next for LionWing. I mean, not to sound like all existential and weird, but like that's kind of how I interpreted the series of events that took place to get me to the point where I said, all right, that's the game. All right. Let's see here. Sorry, I was not reading the chat as I was answering that question, so I'm just catching up on some things. Someone in the chat said Discipline went out of print so fast I couldn't get a copy. Yeah, it did go out very fast, and so did its expansion, the more story driven expansion, which is somewhere back there. So yeah, Discipline's awesome. Last minute question: when doing okay, I'll answer that here in a second. Rogue said, we're able to finally catch LionWing Talks live. Hey, yeah, thanks for catching us live. Hanjay, yeah, good thing was no text on the cards. Yeah, and I'm assuming you're talking about Maid Knight Saga. It's such a relief to not have to read text on a card. Like, when you engage with this medium, there are just some things that you set your expectations to. And one of the expectations we all have come to set for ourselves is that when we pick up a card in a card game or a board game that uses cards, we're just going to, and sort of inherently, we're going to expect to read text on that card. And that's not the case for every card game. Trust me, I'm well aware of that. But it's the case for a lot of games. And so to get one that did not utilize any of that and instead utilized very clear iconography, I was down with that. All right. Question 2. Let's see here. In episode 15, you mentioned your mom watched you playing video games growing up. What did you do for her and your wife for Mother's Day? That's a very personal question. I'll keep it short. For my wife, I took her out to dinner, for an outdoor dinner, because we're still not comfortable like going inside restaurants. So I took her out to an outdoor dinner, and we did that and got her some stuff. And then for my mom, my brother and I cooked her breakfast, and then we just kind of got everyone together, all the kids. My brother has kids, we have kids, and we just hung out for the day. So that was that, without getting too personal. Some things I do like to keep just for me. Question 3. You worked for Sekai Project. I did. Question 4. What is the best kind of chocolate bar? Everyone knows that. It's a Carmelo. Come on. What kind of question is that? What do you like about Maid Knight Saga? Well, I just sort of talked about this before, and I don't know if I necessarily have anything further to add that's of significance, other than to say that it's beautiful and it focuses on subject matter that we haven't touched yet with LionWing. I mean, even if you step outside of the genre of the game and the mechanics of the game and how all of those things play off of one another to create the gameplay experience for Maid Knight Saga, just the actual narrative backdrop and the premise, and the fact that it's dealing with maids is something that we have not done at LionWing. So this is a very different project in practically every manner. It's a bigger project. It's an expensive project. It tackles a premise that is not in any of our previous games. It's with a new designer. It's all of these things that we don't have, and I love that about it. So I think that's what was really appealing. And I've mentioned before how much I love story in games. I mean, if you look at Testament, if you look at Wild Hunt Festival especially, but then even if you look at Gun and Gun, there's story in all 3 of those games, especially in Wild Hunt Festival and Testament. I love story-driven games. Or I shouldn't even say I love story-driven games. I love games that have rich lore to them and have a narrative backdrop that the designers take time to flesh out for players, or not at all, but that stuff still comes through in the gameplay experience. And this is one of those, Maid Knight Saga is one of those properties that has a lot of lore behind it. I mean, there's a 24-chapter web novel that goes along with this game. And that web novel comes out to be about 200 pages in Japanese, 250 pages in English. Like, that's the length of a light novel for a board game. That was very, enticing to me as someone who really likes to have something to dig into in terms of story and characters. And as I mentioned before, I love Sakura Wars, and this game has some serious Sakura Wars vibes. I mean, like, big time. And so naturally, I picked up on that, and I'm like, well, I can't deny Sakura taste, and I can't. That's just... that would be wrong with how much I love that series. So, yeah, that's what I liked about Maid Knight Saga. Let me get to some questions here in the chat real quick, and then I'll come back to question 6, which I think is where I just left off. Af said, last minute question, when doing localization, would there be links to their social or something so that we can encourage and give them love directly? I'm assuming you're talking about the Japanese designers specifically. We haven't. I'm thinking like back to our campaign pages where we put everything sort of at the bottom, because all of our social contacts are always at the bottom of our campaign pages. We always make sure that we give the design studio a bio space, and usually it's the first bio space. We always make sure that somewhere along the way, multiple times, typically, I'm thinking about every campaign update that I've ever written. For every campaign, I've mentioned the design team numerous times. I don't know if I've ever linked their Twitter, because that has not been something that they've ever asked me to do. And different cultures are different when it comes to how they want to engage with folks. And especially if you're the publisher of a works that is being released in another territory, some folks aren't really down with the attention that brings. They're more of like, hey, I'm just going to design the games. I'm going to engage with my audience, and whatever happens on the English side of things, awesome. But we're over here kind of doing our own thing. Now, other designers are very open to engaging and being a part of that process, and so it just kind of depends. Now, if that's something that people are like, hey, we want more direct involvement with, let's say, Laugh Sketch, that is, that's something that I'm totally fine providing, because we give them space on the campaign page anyway and talk about them often. So, let's see here. Can we see your playmats collection? It would be hard to show my playmats collection without having them next to me in a giant stack and me pulling them over one by one and saying, and here's this one. And here's this one. I don't know if that makes for a great video. I guess if I get enough people wanting that kind of thing, I could do it. But it is pretty extensive. I don't know if I would show off all of them, because that would take quite a while. But yeah, I guess y'all will have to let me know if you really want to see that kind of thing. Question about Testament from Last Time Lord. Let's see here. Is it supposed to bring the JRPG experience to the table? And are its counterpart games like Madara and Kingdom Death? Okay, so Testament is not really it doesn't bring the JRPG experience to the tabletop. That's not really the type of game that it is. I mean, I think even on the Kickstarter, we built it as a Final Fantasy inspired cooperative monster battle card game. So it wasn't really a game that we ever marketed as sort of the tabletop adaptation of a JRPG. It's got obviously a ton of JRPG influences in it. I mean, it draws its primary inspiration from Final Fantasy XIV, which is very obvious from its logo font face down to its monster designs, to its monster names, to some of its skill names, to its classes. I mean, clearly, Kuro-san loves Final Fantasy XIV and wanted to make something of a tabletop version of elements of that game. But I wouldn't say that Testament is a JRPG game in the vein of Madara, for instance, because Madara does have a focus on story and character development, along with the fleshing out of its narrative and that kind of thing. Testament's not really that. Testament's more of a game that happens to have some really cool narrative elements attached to it. Now, for the localization, we added additional story elements, things that weren't there that we thought needed to be there. We took concepts and we fleshed them out further to give them more significance, to give them more substance. We added some story content in places that wasn't there at all because we thought that was important. I did, as I've mentioned in a previous show, I did pages upon pages upon pages of lore writing for Testament that was never used, that I essentially created just to write 2 paragraphs for the new Kickstarter characters, which I don't know how good a use of time that really was for me. But hey, I've got pages upon pages upon pages of Testament lore that I wrote that Kuro-san said, oh yeah, write whatever lore you want, like run it by me. But hey, if you want to like create a world for this game, that's fine with me. I don't really want to do any of that stuff. Like, I'm not interested in that. I just get the essentials in there, and then, I'm done. I'm off to the actual like game design. That's the stuff that excites me. And I'm like, yeah, so like game design itself excites me, but the lore writing excites me more. So there's a lot of lore behind Testament that people will probably never know, but it's not a JRPG experience that's driven by some sort of larger narrative. You're not getting character development in the same way as you would get it like in a Gloomhaven. This isn't a legacy system either. You can certainly play Testament in multiple sittings, finish one boss, level up, chart your skill tree however you want in that game, come back next week, come back the next day, whatever the case may be, pick up from where you left off. But there's a clear endpoint, and the endpoint is only, 6 bosses away. So it's not like a huge, Ameritrash type of thematic experience like you'd see in something like Gloomhaven either. And so it sits in the middle ground between something that has no lore and then something that has a lot of lore, with a focus always being on the gameplay for Testament. Now, Wild Hunt Festival, there's a lot of lore. There's a lot of lore that Liner Note and specifically Ramos-san wrote. There's a lot of that lore made it into the game, especially when we pushed Ramos-san, when we were creating the Kickstarter for that. I had told him, like, why don't we like flesh this thing out? Make this a true JRPG experience. Let's have a quest log. Let's have a character book. Let's get into the backstory. Let's do more with this world, because clearly this world is your baby, and this is our first opportunity to introduce a new audience to this world. And the more that we can give people to dig into, the more they're going to be interested in, the more they're going to like the game, the more they might back the game. And so that's how that conversation went, which is why I felt way more comfortable putting the JRPG moniker on Wild Hunt Festival than Testament, because while Wild Hunt Festival is still a boss battler, it is not a Madara. It is a boss battler, like an Aeon's End. It really puts emphasis on its lore in addition to its boss battle mechanics. So there you have it. All right, got some more questions. I will come back to those here in a moment. Let me get to question 6 here on my run sheet. Will there be premium components for Maid Knight Saga in the Kickstarter campaign, and which components will get the upgrade? So I will answer the first part and not the second part. Yes, there will be premium components for the Maid Knight Saga campaign, and we're very excited about what those premium components are. They are components that either we've never offered before, and by that I mean like any campaign we've run ourselves or the Testament campaign, or they're components that we ourselves have never offered before, if you can see the distinction there. And they're components that I think really make the particular tier that has all of these premium components feel special. So if you like go through our campaigns, you see that we typically roll with like 2 tiers, maybe 3 tiers. I'm not counting Sinome, because Sinome was the first game. I was still figuring out what I wanted to do and how I wanted to present Kickstarters, etc. But if you look at our more recent campaigns, we typically go with kind of like your basic tier, and then your second like upgraded collector's level type tier. We'll be doing the same thing with Maid Knight Saga with a small tweak. That small tweak is there because we are not just bringing Maid Knight Saga to Kickstarter. We are bringing Maid Knight Saga and its expansion set, The Battle for London, to Kickstarter as well. So that complicates things a little bit, which is why we will have 3 tiers for Maid Knight Saga, when typically I like to have 2. Now that doesn't mean that every campaign will only ever have 2 tiers or even 3 tiers. There are some campaigns that we've got in the queue that have more than that. But when it makes sense, I like to declutter that rewards sidebar as much as possible, which is why I like to keep it to like 2 to 3 tiers, and which is also why I don't put a retailer's tier on there either, which I talked about that in a previous episode, because it does clutter things up. And usually if a retailer wants your game anyway, they're going to reach out to you to say, hey, what kind of deals do you got for a brick and mortar? Okay. Getting back to the questions in the chat, someone asked, also, I see the Xenosaga collection. Yeah, which was your favorite? Probably 3. I mean, I've got a soft spot for 1 just because it was the first. It did a lot of innovative things that the genre still utilizes, which I think is really cool. It had attached to it the Xeno name at a time when that meant something very special. I mean, it still means something special, but Xeno these days means Xenoblade, which obviously I love too. But then Xeno Saga was the follow up to the beloved Xenogears, and you know what? They went for it, and I think Xeno Saga one is a fantastic game. It's got a lot of nostalgia attached to it. I was working at GameStop when it released. I remember getting it early and being very excited because of that. But I think three is for me, I find three to be the best game of the three. Two. What? I'm not sure what they were trying some stuff with two. All right, I'll give them that. They were trying some stuff. I like two overall. You could tell they were having a bit of an identity crisis. I liked the acrylic stands for Testament, or I like them when I get the game. Will there be an expansion in the future for minis? Probably not, just because it doesn't really make sense to include minis. I mean, it didn't really make sense to include acrylics, but that's what Japan Anime wanted to offer. That's cool. Like that's their thing. Awesome. I was down with it. Like I didn't say like no, we shouldn't do that. But they were the ones who presented that, and I said okay, yeah, whatever. But I don't think I would do minis just because, like the acrylics, you don't use them for the gameplay. They're there to denote your character, and they look rad as hell. I mean, they look really rad, and having a mini, would look really cool too. I would love to see Kokozu's style come to life in miniatures form. But it's like, do people even want that for Testament? Like, does a large portion of the audience want that for Testament when they're not going to engage with that miniature in any meaningful capacity as it pertains to the gameplay itself? And B, is it cost effective on our end when you compare to how many people want or don't want that add-on? So it's a hard thing. I mean, like I said, and this is why I hesitated, probably not. But I'm always open. Like if enough people are like, we want Testament minis, we don't care if like you don't ever touch them in the game. Like, okay, ask and you shall receive. I'm not like vehemently against it, but as I've said before and during the Embryo Machine campaign, right now anyway, we are not a miniatures company, and that's not the game I want to get into right now. If the right project came along that had minis already attached to it, or if we designed something where it made sense for minis to be there, cool. But right now, we're not really in the minis game. And minis are expensive. They add weight to a package. They increase shipping costs. They can slow down the timeline because they're really hard to get right. It's a whole thing to think about for, a game that doesn't actually utilize them in any substantive way. All right, question 7. Okay, so now we get into a series of silly questions, and these were clearly like people feeding off of one another, as you'll see. What's your favorite maid? Not from Maid Knight Saga. Probably Roberta from Black Lagoon. What's your favorite knight from not Maid Knight Saga? Don Taros from Shining Force 3. What's your favorite saga from not Maid Knight Saga? Panzer Dragoon Saga. Who's your favorite knight? Don Taros from Shining Force 3. Who's your favorite Maid Knight? Not from Maid Knight Saga. Noelle from Genshin, although technically she's not a knight yet. She's on her way. You get the idea. What maid would you add to Smash Bros? Roberta from Black Lagoon. What knight would you add to Smash Bros? Cecil from Final Fantasy IV. What knight would you add to Gun and Gun? Not a knight, but she'll do anyway. Embryo from Parasite Eve. What maid would you add to Gun and Gun? I would add a maid specifically designed for Gun and Gun that would be available in a future expansion. You've heard of Mage Knight, but would you play Mage Maid? I wouldn't. It sounds cheap and boring. Who is the best maid and why? Rame from ReZero. All right, there we go. Got through all those. I hope you're all happy, especially you, Fern, since yes, you were the one who started it. But you can't say I didn't answer them because I answered them all. And I only had a couple of repeats. Okay. What's your favorite two-player game that you don't publish? Summoner Wars. I love Summoner Wars. Let's see here. What's the biggest panic moment you've had running LionWing? I'm okay. So I'm not like by design. I'm not much of like a panicker, to my detriment. Some people in my life would say that I should be more reactive to situations that should call for a panicked response. And it's like, it's just not in me. So I won't say that. I won't say that I panicked. Boss man is too chill to panic. That's right. I wish that were the case. It's just like, I don't know. I didn't get like the button in me that is like press in case of an emergency. I wish I would have in some cases. So I guess it would have been getting the closest thing though to like panic that I got would have been getting Embryo Machine ready for Kickstarter. So most of our Kickstarters are done pretty well in advance. Pretty well in advance. You know, we build in time in case, you know, shit goes wrong or like you have a change of heart about something or you're waiting on something from some other content creator. You want some padding, you want a buffer. And we give ourselves those buffers, or we have in every campaign. Embryo was the one campaign where our buffer was not very big. It was the campaign where we were like working up until the clock to finalize some things. Not with the game or anything like that, but with the presentation of the Kickstarter. Time simply got away from us. You know, that game required a different level of engagement because of how much is happening in that game, like component wise and all of that. And because of that, you know, I thought we had charted enough time. And in the end, we charted enough time because when the Kickstarter launched, it launched the way that we wanted it to look with all of the elements that we wanted it to have. But so the Kickstarter launched around, I don't know, noon or 12:30 or something. We were still putting some final touches. Not like mostly everything was done. It was 99% done, but there were a few things that we wanted to alter, and we were still working on those things at 10:30 that morning. So that was a little nerve-wracking. So I guess that was like a panic-like moment. Let's see here. When determining a new project, how much weight is placed on if it is competitive or cooperative play? The only weight I put into whether we should localize a competitive or cooperative game is the weighing I do of what our last few projects were. So, I mean, you can sort of see this in our chronology. Testament, Wild Hunt Festival, co-op games. Gun and Gun, Embryo Machine, competitive card games. In Embryo's case, with some movement and a board. Maid Knight Saga. That's how I weigh things. Are we doing too much of the same thing again? I'm not going to release 3 co-opers in a row. I'm not going to release 3 competitive card games in a row. I don't mind doing back-to-back stuff, you know, as long as there's enough distinction between the two. Now, Wild Hunt Festival and Testament, you know, they're pretty similar. How how they get to the end point is different, but they're both anime themed, fantasy based, card driven boss battlers from Japan. Pretty similar. That Venn diagram overlaps, right? So that's the only thing that I really weigh when looking at games. I don't really weigh like, I did 2 competitive games in Gun and Gun and Embryo Machine. The next game should be a co-opper, because here we are doing another competitive game. So you could say 3 competitive games in a row, but Maid Knight Saga feels very different from the previous 2. So I think that's about all I really weigh, I guess you could say. Okay, let's see here. Question 21. Yes, only on question 21. Will the Maid Knight Saga web novel be translated, and will there be a solo and or 2-player mode created for the Western release? So yes, the web novel will be translated, probably. Not going to reveal any more about the web novel and what we're doing with it. So have to wait a little bit longer for us to reveal that. If we reveal it all, if we reveal the details of that at all before the launch, I haven't quite decided that yet. And no, there will not be a solo or 2-player mode for the Western release. This was something that Kagawa-san and I talked about very early on in the process, pretty much from like week number 2 that we were talking. And I asked that question of, hey, any way that we could do a solo mode? Or if a solo mode is too difficult, can we look at adding just like a 2-player variant? And he said, we tried that. You're not asking me something I didn't already think about, and you're not asking me to do something I didn't already try to do. And it just doesn't work for this game. We tried hard. We really tried, and it doesn't work with this type of game. And so, the designer knows best, right? So when he said, we tried, it didn't work, I took that to mean like, all right, case open, case closed. That's it. Not going to ask about that again. He was pretty adamant, like, yeah, we thought about it, dude. It didn't work. Or else I would have told you about it. Okay, got it. Are there any Japanese-style dungeon crawlers you've been looking into? No, but that's only because there aren't really many right now or at all. In fact, there aren't really like any like true dungeon crawlers like we see in the West. You're not going to get, you're certainly not going to get a Gloomhaven, but then you're not going to get like a Descent like either. You're not going to get a Madara, because someone brought that up before. That genre doesn't really exist in the Japanese scene. It's not a very popular genre over there. Cooperative games in general aren't super popular in Japan. They certainly have gained more popularity in the past, I would say 2 years, especially as cooperative games have risen to prominence in the West. Japan has followed suit to some degree, but they're still not like the go-to genre in the same way that they are here, which means they don't have any big dungeon crawlers either. The closest that you typically get to these types of things would be like a Testament or a Wild Hunt Festival, or like a Brave Architect. But if you're looking for like, but all of those are like more boss battle based games that have leveling involved, but they're not dungeon crawlers. Like the only true dungeon crawlers that I can think of are the 2 that come to the top of my mind would be Fantastic Adventure R and there's no more room left in this world for heroes. I think that's the title, the translated title. But both of those are very compact type dungeon crawling experiences. Fantastic Adventure R, was, I think, a 1-person team, and you can kind of see some of that in its presentation, which is crazy because actually the you can see the bones of something really, really solid there. But that designer just didn't put it all together, you know? I think probably just because they were working by themselves. And I think also it was their first game. So, you know, probably a learning experience too on their end. Just not a lot of games occupy that space in Japan, which is unfortunate because I'd be all over that if it were the case. All over it. Question 23. This comes from Monday. Someone asked this. Why don't you like playing on stream? That's a good question. So there's an old saying in leadership. Never put yourself in a position to take from those you lead. So I worked in multiple industries. I worked in the video games localization industry. I worked in the social work industry. Now I'm in this industry. I have found that adage to be appropriate, applicable in all three of those industries in leadership roles. So I don't like playing on stream or against folks for that reason. Outside of like, you know, the LionWing team, that's like it's part of the job. You play the games, you play them a lot, you play them with your team, you play them with your QA folks. I play a lot there. And I also like to give the community an opportunity to play the game. And I don't need to be there. You know, I don't need to be the one playing the game. Like, I already know how to play the game. I don't need to play the game. And in many cases, like with Gun and Gun, I've been playing Gun and Gun since early 2020. In many cases, 6 days a week, for multiple hours, all 6 days, for months on end. After a while, you're like, okay, I'm not going to play that for a while because I don't need to play it for a while anymore, right? I've already done that. I put my time in. I need to distance myself. As I've talked about, localization burnout is a real thing. And sometimes you don't want to touch a game you've played a little too much. Not to mention when you play a game that much, like, you know, you know things about the game that like you shouldn't know. Or you know things about the game that like players who are first coming to the game and learning the game on their own, they don't know. And you don't want to show that. You want people to experience that and get to that point on their own. That's part of the fun. And so I guess I could just play down, you know, and like not do stuff, but that's also hard to do. It's like being a trained singer and trying to sing off key. Kind of hard to do, right? So that's why I don't play on stream. Question 24, you mentioned that you only work on projects that you fully believe in. This is great for us too, as you end up as some sort of curator for what will be offered. Do you think your game assessment / evaluation is as objective as it can be, or do you embrace the subjectivity of your review? Yeah, of course it's not objective. It is not objective at all. These are all games that I personally like. There's very little objectivity to it. I think I've shared that before. Like, you know, LionWing is mostly a company for me to play and publish the games that I want to play in English. And if other people happen to like those games too, awesome. I'm really glad to hear that. But I'm mostly just picking games that I personally like. So it's 100% subjective. Now it's important that, you know, the games you like are also games that other people will like. And if there comes a time when I'm putting out consistent games that people don't seem to respond to, then, you know, I'll need to adjust things a little bit. But, you know, it's very subjective. Okay. Someone in the chat said, tonight's lesson, want to play a game in a language of your choosing? Create a company. That's what I did. Question 25, somewhat related to that question. You mentioned that you will get games very close, that we will get games very close to the Japanese release in the future, which is great. How do you get to assess and evaluate those games? You know, at this point, I kind of know most designers, or at least I know most of the designers who occupy the corner of the industry in the corner that I want to be in. And even if I don't know them personally, I know of them. And so I will regularly reach out to people and say, hey, what do you got in the queue? We're looking for projects for 2022, 2023. What have you got going on? Are you designing anything? If you are designing stuff right now and you would be interested in working with us for the first time, or again, can we check it out? Can we see what it's like? Can we play it, ourselves? It would be great to be able to launch the English release very close to the Japanese release. I don't think we'll ever get to a simul release schedule, though we might with one thing, but that simul releases will definitely not be the norm. But we're going to shoot for getting pretty close. So, you just talk to people. I just talk to people and ask them what they've got in the can and if I can check it out. And some people are like, yeah, absolutely. And other people are like, we're not quite ready, to be talking about that further, or to be showing it off, or to even be allowing people to play it, because we ourselves are still testing it, and I don't want to give you a product that's not good and then we miss out on a localization opportunity because you played an earlier build of the game that wasn't balanced or not fully fleshed out, et cetera, et cetera. So you just talk to people. Okay. Sin in the chat asked, has there ever been a game you absolutely loved, but for one reason or another decided it was a no for LionWing? Yes. There have been a lot of games like that. There have been a lot of games like that. I don't want to throw any names out there, because I don't want it to imply that I'm dogging on someone's game by saying oh, it's not LionWing enough or whatever. But there are games that just do not, we have a very specific style of game. I said, I think in episode 1, that I always wanted a LionWing game to be very recognizable. I wanted people to walk into a store, see the box art without ever looking at, our publishing logo and say, oh, it looks like a LionWing game. Huh, it is a LionWing game, right? So we have a very particular style of game, particular style of look for a game that we go for. And there are some games that I love coming out of Japan that just do not at all fit our aesthetic or fit our gameplay approach or anything like that. So this is sort of a related question, actually. Question 26, have you ever started the localization process for something and not gotten to market for any reason? Yeah, one time, actually. The game was done. And everything. And then the designer just disappeared. Twitter gone, wouldn't respond to our emails, nothing. We never heard from them again. It was so weird. We were done. We were done. Done. What? That was year and a half ago, 2 years ago. I don't know, somewhere around there. 1 to 2 years ago, let's say. It was in 2019. So there you go. All right. Some less targeted questions here, but I guess questions that people still want to know. What's your favorite Final Fantasy regular boss theme? Probably Heroes from Final Fantasy XIV, which is King Thordan's theme after the ultimate attack. Fucking love that theme. That's from the Heavensward expansion. And then your favorite Final Fantasy end boss theme, Ultimecia's theme at the end of Final Fantasy VIII, which I believe is called the Extreme. I think it's called the Extreme. I love that theme. It's very unlike any other Final Fantasy boss theme. It is the antithesis to the traditional JRPG boss theme. The traditional JRPG boss theme, you can kind of hear it in your head, right? It's driving drums, wailing guitars. Maybe they've thrown some orchestral instrumentation, a choir of voices, like One Winged Angel, right? From 7. So Ultimecia's final boss theme is the exact opposite of all of that. It's very subdued, it's quiet, it's melodic, it's a little mysterious. you hear it and you're like, is this is this the final boss? Are we sure? I'm not sure it is based on this theme, but that's why I love it. And it's just like, it's good. It's good. Some Symphony of the Night. Yeah, boss music. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Actually, yeah. Yes, I like Symphony of the Night. I think I'm thinking of the Symphony of the Night boss theme. Oh, this is going to bother me now. For some reason, I'm getting Symphony of the Night's final boss theme mixed up with Order of Ecclesia's final boss theme. Oh God! All right, too many Castlevanias in my life, I guess. Another Final Fantasy question. Apparently, people wanted to hear about Final Fantasy today. What is your favorite mainline Final Fantasy? Final Fantasy 12, specifically the Zodiac Age. But even before the Zodiac Age released a couple years ago, it was still Final Fantasy 12. Favorite Final Fantasy job class. Single player Final Fantasy, we'll say Dragoon. Multiplayer Final Fantasy, like 14 or 11, White Mage. Though there's an exception to be made for an Astrologian in 14, because that's my main. It's got cards. I'm nothing if not predictable. What's your favorite Final Fantasy spin-off? That's a tough one. So it's a toss-up between Final Fantasy Tactics Advance and Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. So I think the two games came out within about 18 months of one another. I have very fond memories of both of them. They happened to drop at a time in my life when I was really into games, really into JRPGs. I think those came out my junior year of high school, senior year. I don't know, one or the other. Gosh, I don't know which one I like more though. I really love. So a lot of people would not expect me to say Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. They would assume that I would stop at the tactics part because that's like everyone's favorite spin-off Final Fantasy. And I love Tactics. It's great. It's really great. I like Ramza. He's fantastic. But I like Advance's whimsicalness. There is a certain level of whimsy to that game that is like just really magical and a little like never-ending story-ish. I like Marsh a lot. I love the colorful color palette. It's super vibrant. The gameplay is rock solid. It's got a clan system in it. Damn, it's good. But Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles has a multiplayer experience that gave me memories that I still think about to this day that will last me likely the rest of my life. So I think based on that alone, I would say Crystal Chronicles because it's given me more memories than Tactics Advance. There you have it. That's the definitive rule. Okay. I'm 100% going to need to know Bradley Hailstorm's favorite Lego Star Wars game. It is Lego Star Wars The Complete Saga because you get to play episodes 1 through 6 and you got the most characters of any Lego game up until that point. Yeah, and I mean, I don't really have a ton of interest in the sequel trilogy. I mean, it was fine, but the games that were created from the sequel trilogy, when it comes to the Lego Star Wars games, they were good. Of course, they're good. But you just can't beat being able to play the first 6 episodes in one single game. I'm looking forward to the new release, which will be cool. Even more games in one. I do like Lego games. I've come to like them even more since my son started getting into watching me play video games. So, yeah. Ben in the chat. Quote, I mean, it was fine, but, end quote, the definitive Disney Star Wars movie take. I mean, I love Rogue One. That's my second favorite Star Wars movie. And if you catch me on a weird day, I might say it's my favorite. I love Solo. But, 7, 8, and 9. Those two were a lot of fun. Yes, they were. Yes, they were. My expectations were for Solo were like really low. I don't know why, but it exceeded those expectations significantly. And even if my expectations were appropriately set or even high, I think I still would have been impressed by that movie. I really liked that movie. So Final Fantasy The Spirits Within is the best Final Fantasy movie, right? I mean, I think it's better than that trash called Advent Children. So, there that is. The door squeak was clutch. I know. I know. I know. Oh, I thought about that too. Oh, it was a well placed door squeak. All right. Getting back to these questions here, have you tried any multiplayer gun and gun games like 2v2 or Free For All? Yeah, so we normally do this with all of our games. We just play in ways that we're not supposed to just to see if it works, to say like, oh, you know what, that was fun. We should offer that as a variant or offer it as like a stretch goal variant, that kind of thing. It didn't work super well with gun and gun. I mean, yeah, it didn't work super well. 2v2 was more interesting than Free For All. Free For All was not very fun. Not very fun at all. Smash did do a great job with pretending Advent Children was good. I agree, Ben. Yeah, crossovers are good at that kind of thing. Yeah, Project Crosszone, right? Okay, let's see here. When can we hear the pilot LionWing podcast you alluded to? Never, because it's got audio issues, and I will not put up shows with audio issues. I mean, I won't put up shows at all if I think that if it's reflective of us in a bad way in any way. Just like I'm not putting up this past Monday's LionWing Plays. It was audio issues. We had a number of problems on the stream. Nope. Next. Question 36. Have other LionWing members researched or presented to you games that eventually become projects in the LionWing lineup, or is it you do most of the heavy lifting in regards to that? Yeah, no. Yeah, so that hasn't really happened much. Winona has suggested a few things before, just like casually, but most of the team aren't really interested in doing that kind of thing. I mean, I'm always open to listening to suggestions and feedback. I mean, I do that in the chat all the time, and when Winona has suggested I check a few things out, I've done so. And in fact, there's one recommendation of hers that I have been pursuing. So I do listen to that kind of thing, but most of the time it's just, I don't think they're interested, and it's me just kind of like, doing all that, doing the scouting and narrowing things down and deciding which one we're going to go with, which one we're not going to go with, that kind of thing. I do every time. When I have gotten it down to the game that I think that like, hey, this is going to be the next thing, or like, this is going to be a project in the future, even if it's like a year and a half down the line, I will say like, all right, so here is a LionWing game, I think. Let's check it out, and then I want you to tell me what you think of it. So I always get feedback on the game that I think I'm going to go with. Question 37. What's your favorite anime opening song? Probably Haruna Katana from Naruto, which I think was opening number 2. It's by Asian Kung Fu Generation. I liked that a lot. I liked Gong by Wanima, which was I think the 14th One Piece film. I'm blanking on the subtitle right now. Sen said that song's fantastic. Which one, Sen? Question here in the chat. Do you think that Gun and Gun will ever do homage crossovers with items, actions, mechanisms alluding to famous gunslingers? I don't know. I mean, it ultimately comes down to like, can you get the licensing rights? And most of the time you can get licensing rights. Like these days, people are in the business of licensing out their properties and their characters. But it's like, all right, is it worth the money? Like how much is it going to cost us? That's more of the issue, and not so much like, can we do it? Should we do it? It's more of like how much is it going to cost to do it? And does it make sense to do it once we know what that cost is? But I think there's some serious crossover potential with Gun and Gun. All right. Let's see here. Okay. Yes, Sin. Haruna Katsuna's. Damn, it's good. Speaking of anime, out of all the anime you have seen, what was your biggest disappointment? What was your biggest surprise? Biggest disappointment was no Grimgar season 2. Biggest surprise, the realization that Makako from Voices of a Distant Star never aged, while Noboru did age 10 years. They had been alluding to that entire thing for the entirety of that OVA, that time did not move at the same pace that it did for Makako as it did for Noboru. But I don't know if it just didn't register or what happened, or if I wasn't paying attention. But there's a scene, if you've seen Voices of a Distant Star, there's a scene pretty much right at the end of the film where she says something like, happy birthday from like your 15-year-old me. And it's the first time I think that they like really spell it out, like, all right, she went off to fight in the war at 15 when they were 15. I think he was 16, she was 15. 10 years has gone by in his life and he's 26. He's like moved on and she hasn't. She's still 15. And like, I remember, now mind you, I was a teenager when that film came out, but I remember like being like, oh fuck, like that's heavy. Like it hit me right in the feels. I don't know why, like that one line that she says right now, like, look at this hair standing up on my arm. There was such a powerful moment and such a powerful realization for me as a viewer. Like, oh shit, I'm getting a little glossy eyed just talking about that maybe Voice of a Distant Star means a lot to me. So that was a big surprise. I liked that surprise. All right, sorry, I missed a few things in the chat here, apparently. Are those mechs on the tables the ones that won the votes? No, they are not. No, they're not. I'll talk about which ones are winning the votes here in a minute. Okay, another question. 39. We're getting to the end, folks. Do you have a favorite digital card game? Yes, Phantasy Star Online Episode 3 Card Revolution for the GameCube. Who is your favorite Toho character? Marissa, maybe? I don't know. I don't really have a favorite Toho character. I guess when I think about like Toho, I think of more of like the games. So like I have a favorite game for the mainline series, and that is Imperishable Night, because that was the first one I played. I think that is game 8 in the series, 2004 release. That was the first one that I played. Yeah. Yo, Imperishable Night is real good. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Favorite mech from anything? Question 41. Probably the 747 series of Temjin from Virtualon, more specifically Virtualon Force. But if you're not considering a Virtualoid as a proper mech, I guess I would go with the Zenith Wanzer from Front Mission Evolved, Waltall from Xenogears. Yeah, probably Zenith or Weltall from Xenogears. I think that's my answer. But like, if Virtualon counts, then it's definitely Temjin, the 747 series. I don't think there is not a more beautiful mech than Temjin 747. There's just not. I mean, the 700 series of Tenjin, chef's kiss, right? But 747, next level shit, man. Next level shit. Question 42. If you could have any video game property turned into an actually good board game, which would you choose? Well, I can't talk about that because it could be happening. Question 43. Do you think we could ever get Record of Lodoss War to the tabletop? Well, Japan certainly has. They got a whole fucking tabletop RPG. Recently, too. By Group SNE. A damn good design studio. It was published by Katakawa, though, which makes the game very challenging to get for a publishing agreement. So if Record of Lodoss War came to the tabletop in the West, it would have to be through a game designed from the ground up, utilizing the license, which is probably the way to go anyway, because then you wouldn't have to pay a royalty fee to a design team that's already created a Record of Lodoss War game in Japan on top of the licensing fee to the rights holder. So that's probably the way to do it. I think there's a lot of cool ass shit you could do with Record Lodoss War. Like the possibilities feel pretty endless right there. Everything from, getting back to the earlier question, a dungeon crawler to a card game to a minis game. I mean, you could do so much with that property to your own tabletop RPG. I mean, clearly, Record of Lodoss War and me are like this. So I would love that. Let's see here. Yeah, so someone's talking about the Toho license and how it's not exactly free. Yeah, so if you're doing like fan projects or whatever, or like you're selling merch on Etsy that features characters from Toho, whatever, you can do it. You don't even have to ask permission. But if you are going to do a commercial release, you do have to ask permission, and Zune does not allow crowdfunding, so you can't do Kickstarters utilizing a Toho property. He thinks it cheapens the brand, which is the philosophy of a lot of Japanese designers when it comes to their series, which I can understand. I don't agree with at all. If a Marvel property, if a Marvel board game can show up on Kickstarter, your not Marvel game can probably show up on Kickstarter too. But I digress. Okay. That's it. Those are all the questions. 43 questions. I hope I didn't miss one. If I did, I'm sure someone will tell me about it. Let's talk about project updates. Where are we? Hour and 14 minutes on the nose. Okay, not too bad. I'm going to take a drink. I've been talking for a long time. I'm going to mute this mic so you don't hear me slurping. Okay, back. The whistle's wet. Project updates. Testament. So you can go right now to japanimegames.com and you can order Testament. You can add it to your cart. You can click the checkout button. You can input your credit card digits. You can pay for shipping, and you can click submit. And the game will come to you. That's where we're at with Testament. In fact, backers already have copies of Testament. Caveat, some backers, not all backers. Most of the folks in our Discord don't have their copies yet. But the game is out in the wild now. So it feels good. It feels good to finally have that game out there. Board Game Geek tossed out a tweet late last night that we retweeted this morning, that the game was coming on May 26th officially, but you can get it now. So Testament's there. As I've mentioned before, I hope to do something else with Testament someday. I'm not sure what that something would be. I'm not sure if that would look like a standalone expansion or if that would look like something else entirely. But I want to do something with it. I've got all this lore that I've written. I've got a really cool world that I think it's a really cool world that I've written for it. I'd like to do something with that. I think there are stories to tell in that universe. And I think there are a variety of gameplay approaches you could utilize to tell those stories. So there you have it. All right, let's see here. So people are just talking about the whole Testament shipping debacle. I really felt bad for Japanime, for Heather especially. She posted that update, what was it, like a week ago, like essentially saying like, yo, we don't know what's going on with some of with our US orders. Like they're lost or like they're being held hostage for $5,000 or something. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad. And then she wrote an update like, I don't know, 2 hours later saying like, actually they just arrived on a box truck in the back of it. It's like, oh my gosh, what a wild ride that's been, right? Hey, can someone tell me if my video quality has gotten strange over the past few minutes? It looks a little weird right now, but I can't tell if that's just my eyes playing tricks on me. Rogue in the chat said, I'm glad Record Lotus War was the last question. I'll keep praying it becomes a future LionWing project. Yeah, I mean, clearly the rights holders of Lodos are cool with doing additional multimedia projects. I mean, we've got that Metroidvania Record of Lodos War game on Steam right now. SNE designed the tabletop role-playing game in Japan. So, I mean, there's a precedent there where they're clearly open to that kind of thing. So I don't think it's out of the question. And like, clearly I really like the property. I'd love to do something with it. I'm not like super huge on doing things with anime properties just because I tend to be more into like video game properties. But if there was an anime property to do something with, that would be one of the ones that I would definitely be interested in pursuing. Fern in the chat said, Heather's great. She is. Yes, I worked with her a lot, obviously, and well, on Testament, getting that to Kickstarter and all that. Someone says, a little pixelated. Yeah, it is a little pixelated. I'm not sure what's going on there. I don't like it, though. I'll tell you that much. Let's see if I can do something about that. 1 second. We're going to go black for a second. And, Let me try something here. Screen's going to go black for a moment. Oh, this is never good. This is risky. You never know how this is going to turn out. It's probably not the greatest idea, especially with the, that's not it. With the amount of problems I've had lately. Probably should have just left it, huh? Well, as I'm doing this, I will, you get a nice black screen here. I will say that, so Testament, yeah, we're moving along there. I'm hoping that people get their copies soon. Kradia. Yeah, so I just dropped a message to Petra, who is handling all of the fulfillment coordination, shipping, logistics, that kind of thing, in conjunction with Fun Again. I dropped her an email 2 days ago. She said she was reaching out to Fun Again to see where our shipment was. It's on the water somewhere, but I don't know where right now. And so that's the latest information that I'm trying to get from her. Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily have anything more to say about Wild Hunt Festival other than like it needs to hurry up and get here because like I'm dying for people to play Wild Hunt Festival. This was a bad idea to Oh, to deactivate the camera. I should have known better. I should have just tried a different. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Anyway, I'll keep going. Yeah, that's right. Let's see here. Look at that. You are close to finishing on time and boom video issues. Looks like this video might not be uploaded later given Bradley's quality control. Yeah, no, that's true. Like if I can't get this figured out, I actually will not be posting this. So, so here you go. All right. So what else we got going on? Gun and Gun update. Operation Bulletstorm is underway. We are coming up on tournament day. Tournament day is Sunday. I think one of the groups, maybe Sin can correct me on this. I think one of the groups is done, right? Or at least pretty darn close to it. So yeah, it's almost done there. I talked with the printer yesterday morning. We're waiting on the sleeves. So, it's funny. There's always that one component that was completely unnecessary that you decided to add because you felt like it would really add to the experience of the game. But that didn't need to be there, might I add. Again, that slows down the process. This happened with Wild Hunt Festival. We got tripped up on the thematic first player token, slowed us down. And now we're getting caught up on the sleeves. The Gun and Gun sleeves. That's what we're waiting on. So the second round of proofs would have gone out last week, but I guess the proofs came back for the sleeves and they were not up to snuff, and so they are being reprinted. But apparently, because the same thing happened with our first round of proofs for Gun and Gun, is they take longer than all the other components to produce. I have no idea why. In actuality, it seems like the easiest component to print out of all of the components. So that's confusing. But because of that, the second round of proofs will not be going out until next week. Yikes. You just saw the video feed. Someone said they just saw the video feed and then it went out again. I would love to know how that happened because I'm not seeing anything on my end of things. Yeah, I wish I knew what was going on here, but I don't. So there you have it. Oh yeah, it was only on the left side of the corner. Yeah, that's because I jumped down to my my LionWing Plays setup, which has the video in the upper left-hand corner to make room for this gameplay stream. Let's see here. Embryo Machine. Monday, May 31st is when Tabletop Simulator will be updated, and we'll also be playing Embryo Machine that night on LionWing Plays. That'll be the first night that we play Embryo Machine there. I think our two community leads, Sin Theory and Real Beans, are going to be the ones playing, but we'll be continuing to play Embryo Machine for quite a while thereafter because we've already had, 7 weeks or so of Gun and Gun. It's time to change things up. So right now, Garu is still in the lead for being one of two of the Embryo machines that get added to the Tabletop Simulator demo, and then Arachne is close behind. So it looks like Garu and Arachne will be the two models that we add, and the two decks, the two loadouts that we add to the Embryo Machine TTS version. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm still trying to kind of fool around with. Hey, look at that! It's me. I'm back, baby. Sorry about that. Thank you if you stuck through that whole thing. So Embryo Machine. Let's see here. Anything else to add to Embryo Machine? We're still waiting on the illustration for the new map. It's taking longer than I expected, and it's taking longer than I was told it would take, but it's not like worrisome. We actually still have 2 months before we need to go to print, so we're like 2 months ahead of schedule. In this COVID environment, that means nothing, though. You can be 2 months ahead of schedule and then be 2 months late on your delivery somehow, because that's where we're at right now with shipping logistics. Someone in the chat just said, shit, what were the two mechs that are leading the polls? It's Garu and Arachne. Let's see here. It's just for a full breakdown, so you know who's liking whom. Garu and Arachne, 1 and 2, respectively. Tordahan coming in third, but kind of far behind Arachne. Fornice, very close to Tordahan. Hystrix, Visner, Zimmer. Absolutely no love for Zimmer. 2 people. 2 people. What are you guys doing? Zimmer is so good. Zimmer is so good. I mean, Zimmer wouldn't be my top choice either, but I do like Zimmer a lot. I was hoping for Fornice selfishly, but it's going to be Garu and Arachne. There you have it. So, Maid Knight Saga. This is our last project update, Maid Knight Saga. We announced it on Monday at noon. We did a soft announcement. I'll talk about that here in a second. Declaring that Maid Knight Saga and its expansion, which is called the Battle for London, will be hitting July. We'll be hitting Kickstarter in July. It'll be the first part of July. It'll be early July. I'll just say that. So we're not going to be waiting toward the end of July or anything like that. We've got about 6 weeks or so would be my guess until we go live. I'm not really ready to nail down a date yet, just because I want to have the ability to push it out a week if we need the extra time. Though, as I mentioned briefly on Monday, we're actually we would have been good for a June launch. But after Embryo Machines Kickstarter, as talked about earlier, I wanted to give us as much time as I could. And so I decided, you know what, let's move it from June to July. That way we're not rushing, because I really don't want to do that whole thing again. So we're bringing both games to Kickstarter. Maid Knight Saga, The Story of Falticia is the base game. And then its expansion set is called The Battle for London. The expansion is an expansion set. It's not an expansion. It's an expansion set. So it adds to the game and it integrates with the base game. It's not like you're playing a separate game when you play the expansion. You're going to add components to the base game, and the base game will become expanded upon. Go figure, right? So Falticia. So Maid Knight Saga sort of takes place in a bit of a parallel universe where England is called Falticia. London is the capital of Falticia. And some stuff happens that requires London to be rescued, reclaimed. And those events get integrated into the available activities for your students when playing base game Maid Knight Saga. So in Maid Knight Saga, kind of like the big hook, its main gameplay gimmick is making these decision points about like how you're going to utilize your time with your student, which classes or lectures they're going to attend, and which classes and lectures they're not going to attend, which extracurriculars they're going to engage in, what missions they take on, what outdoor activities they partake in, and which ones they don't, depending, and there's some other things too. I'm just kind of throwing out a couple that come to top of mind. Depending on, which things you focus on is going to determine how your character grows stat-wise. Now, you've got 4 stats in the game. Strength, purity, beauty, wisdom. Depending on, what classes you're attending or not attending, what missions you take on, et cetera, what your training involves is going to determine which of those stats you raise. Now, there's a card drafting element to this as well, so it's not like you're always getting to choose the exact activity that you want to engage in. You're gonna draft cards, and that's ultimately going to be the pool of activities you can choose from, but you have to choose wisely based on what other people are playing, based on how you want to see your character grow over the course of the game, based on how you plan to acquire victory points, based on how you are going to take your provisional maid licensure exam, which is going to set you up to be able to perform better late game. So there's the name of the game is decision points, really. Lots of decision points, but never to the point of where they're like crippling decision points. I was recently playing Forder Xanadu from Kuro, and it's one of those games where I found myself, I got stuck at one point because there's so many decisions that you can make, despite the fact that that game is very intuitive. It's a very decision heavy game, but it's one of those games where like, the wrong decision can really set you back. And certainly the wrong decision of Maid Knight Saga can set you back as well. But there's a little bit of leeway there of where if you make kind of a mistake, you make a wrong decision, you've still got time to like pull the nose up. You're not totally fucked for the rest of the game just because of like one bad decision, one bad play. And I like that about Maid Knight Saga a lot. I really love Maid Knight Saga with the expansion. I'm not just saying that because, we're going to be selling 2 products. The expansion is there for a reason. I love what it brings to the table component-wise, especially with what we're going to be doing with our premium components. I love its story. And let's talk about story for a minute. So I think Mox asked about the web novel, and I mentioned before there's a 24-chapter web novel that goes along with this game. Kagawa-san and Laugh Sketch in general has billed Maid Knight Saga as a multimedia project, part board game, part novel. We're going to be translating that novel. How that novel gets to backers, not totally decided just yet. Will be decided in the next 2 weeks. But I will say this, we're almost done with chapter 1 of that web novel. Lots of cool stuff happens in that web novel, and how it integrates with actual gameplay is really cool. To know these characters that you're playing as, to see them sort of in action, to see their stories unfold over the course of the gameplay, knowing kind of what's happening in the novel is a really cool experience that we've never been able to do. We've gotten close to that with Wild Hunt Festival, but Wild Hunt Festival didn't have a 250-page light novel to go along with it. You know what I mean? It had like a 20-page character book and a quest log. This is like on a different scale, which I really like. So I think people are going to like how much you can like dive into this. Yes, this is not a competitive card game. And so people aren't going to be like talking about made it and card combinations and like streaming it every night. And that's not going to be happening like it is with Gun and Gun or Embryo Machine. But this will engage people in a way that they haven't been engaged with before. But they might be engaged with the Wild Hunt Festival because there's a lot of story elements with the Wild Hunt Festival. And that's really exciting to me, to be able to have people engage with our products in a new way and to engage in a game in a new way. Just looking at the chat here because I missed a few things. Fern said, "Woo, made game for my birthday Kickstarter." Yeah, honestly, expansions that add just to the base game are my favorites. That's in theory, like the smaller expansions for Eldritch Horror. Yeah, so I think, I don't know. I feel like you're in one or two camps and usually not in a third. I feel like there's the audience out there like you, Sin, who like you want your expansion set to be an expansion set, an add-on pack, something you add on to the previously existing game. And then you've got other people who want, they want the additional content, yes, but they want something standalone and something just as big as the base game. That's not the case here, right? This is the former. So hopefully people dig what's happening with the Battle for London. The Battle for London is really cool. I mean, just the name in and of itself, I think, is really cool and kind of indicates what it might add to the game that is not there already. You've got the base game, which is like this quintessential, school life simulator. There's some missions you can take on in the base game, but then you've got this whole other battle element that the expansion incorporates and really kind of like breathes this different kind of life into the game that you don't have if you're just playing the base game. Everyone should play the base game. They should play the base game by themselves, and I also think everyone should then play the base game with the expansion. It's cool. I like both depending on the game. Dominion-esque games should always work no matter which set you get. Something like Settlers should always require the base game. Yeah, and the expansion set for Maid Knight Saga is not going to be priced anywhere near the price of the base set. I think I've always talked about and have really prided ourselves on try to make our games as affordable as possible. Things are getting more expensive, I will say that, Printing is getting more expensive. It has gotten more expensive since this time last year. Shipping is considerably more expensive than it was this time last year. Considerably more expensive. That's both freight shipping and just your standard international and domestic shipping. All those things, ground shipping, all those things have gone up. But still, I always want to make sure that our games feel right when it comes to price, and the expansion set will certainly be priced appropriately. Like Destiny charging full price for an incomplete DLC. And then Sin followed that up by saying, as much as I love Destiny, they do so much wrong. Yeah, so that's Maid Knight Saga. As I mentioned in the announcement, we're going to be revealing more details about Maid Knight Saga in the coming weeks, obviously. You will probably start seeing it pop up in your Facebook feed. June sometime. You'll start seeing those ads, I would imagine, especially if you've seen our previous ads. You will see this one too. I mentioned that this was a soft reveal, and that's because we didn't do the full press release, email blast out to all available outlets, etc., etc. That'll happen in June. This was just kind of like a very soft announcement of what's coming in the future. And yes, it was an official announcement, but kind of like our big official announcement won't happen until next month sometime. So there you have it. I think you sold Maid Knight in only one episode, said Silent Frank. Hey, thanks, Frank. I think, Frank, you were the one in the chat who said I need to see gameplay, or I'm on the fence or whatever. I need to know more. And that's a little bit about Maid Knight Saga. I'm going to be talking more specifically about what it is, how it plays in the coming weeks, of course, and coming episodes of the show, of course. We've got multiple preview videos coming. We've got another in-depth 12-minute tutorial coming from Cardboard Stacker, who is the same folks who did our Embryo Machine tutorial, Gun and Gun tutorial, and Wild Hunt Festival tutorial. And we've got 3 gameplay preview videos coming. We've got someone who's going to be streaming the game once the campaign is live. So, there'll be plenty of opportunities for you to check out what the game is all about. So, if you are looking forward to gameplay footage, you're going to get it. It's an expansive game. I've got the box back here. Now, our box will be a little bit different than the Japanese release, but right now the box is the same size as Wild Hunt Festival. It's packed with components. It kind of doesn't look like it when you just, if you're just looking at it here. An expensive game to print. Just leave it at that. There's a lot going on inside this box. So someone in the chat said, are you going to keep the box art? Are you going to change the box art? I'm not really ready to reveal that just yet, although I have the answer to it. I think that people in either camp will be happy with what we decide to do. I've got the expansion over there, but that's not really important. Anyway, let's see here. Reading the chat, I'd have to spell that out if I talked about that. I'll just leave that be. So, that's Maid Knight Saga. Hey, if you notice, we changed the name of the game. It is not called Maid Knight Saga in Japan. It was not called Maid Knight Saga on Board Game Geek up until yesterday when our approvals went through. So it was called something else that roughly equated to Lowtown Maid Story. Though I think on the Board Game Geek profile page, people are sort of casually calling it Downtown Maid Story. Now, this was before we renamed the game. But anyway, the name is not the same as it was in Japan. The subtitle is the same. The Story of Faltitia was in the Japanese release name, and it's in our English release as well. But Maid Knight Saga was something that we created. And I will be talking about that whole process, along with like the logo, which you saw the first shot at the base game's logo on Monday as well. I'll be talking about all that with Winona. We're going to do another live stream where we talk and break down the localization process on Maid Knight Saga, because she's the graphic designer on that project. She was the graphic designer on Gun and Gun. So we're going to do the same thing that we did with Gun and Gun, where we sit down and we go through a whole like presentation about the changes we made, the challenges we came up against when it came to the graphic design and the localization elements of it. We've got stories to tell. We've got stories to tell with this game. So the localization was nowhere even remotely close to being as challenging as it was for Gun and Gun, but it's still, like every localization project, it still had its challenges, and we're excited to be able to talk about that. We're going to be doing that live stream while the campaign is, well, live. So sometime in July. Sin in the chat said, I like the new name. Good. I'm glad you do. We went through multiple variations, and I will be talking about and revealing each of those variations in the stream that I do with Winona in July. Waiting for board games to get like anime, where some people use the Japanese name, and others use the localized name. Yeah, I mean that. I don't like to change game names. This is the first game that we've ever changed the name on. And some people will say, well, you should have changed the name with Sonoma Coliseum Arc, because like, what the hell is that name? And it's not my thing. It's not my thing. I like to maintain the original name as much as possible. Maid Knight Saga was a different beast, though. This was it was a name that did not translate well, and it was a name that did not accurately reflect what the game was. Lowtown Maid Story? Downtown Maid Story? No, that's not going to do. So this was one where I was like, all right, yeah, okay, I'm changing the name. Here we go. So, Rogue in the chat said, Bradley keeps teasing about the G&G video. We need a retake of the video. Yeah, so Winona and I are going to be doing a restream of that whole thing because the video quality was trash. Actually, no, the video quality on that one was good. It was the audio quality on Winona's end. Nothing to do with Winona, but had to do everything with, on my end, capturing her audio. It just didn't come through very cleanly. So we're going to be doing that show again on one of these LionWing Talks, probably as Gun and Gun is being fulfilled, just to get people hyped about getting their copies. Quality control game. Too strong. That's right. With anime, you have people using a completely changed name, people using a rough translation, and others using, Romanji film. Yeah, so it is different in the anime scene and even in the video game scene, although video games don't suffer from it nearly as much as anime. But it is an anime name has to check a lot of boxes. A lot of boxes. It also has to go through a whole bunch of teams. Both people who have a very good grasp on what that series is, what it embodies, and what its new name reflects about the type of show that it is, then getting past to people in leadership who may not be as connected to the project, deciding that's a good name or no, we need something more like this. And if they're not connected very deeply to the project, when they come back and say, no, we need something more like this, it could be something really lame or generic or not befitting of what the series is, because again, they're not connected in the same way that the localization folks are. So it is a different beast. And I'm so glad that this is my company and that I get to make these decisions and no one else. Now, the Kagawa-san was consulted on the name. He's been consulted every step of the way on the things that we've changed, because we've changed some things with some of the character names. We'll talk about why that was. All of these names are for the better and for accuracy purposes. But everything always goes through Kagawa-san. I mean, I don't have to do that, but that's the right thing to do. And Kagawa-san has been such a good partner, such a good partner to have, that he's been very open and willing to give feedback on these things. And yeah, so he liked Maid Knight Saga. I'll talk about what his reaction actually was to that name when we do that localization video in July. Another question. Yeah. Let's see here. I'm jumping down real quick. I kid. I appreciate not uploading any videos with audio video quality issues. Makes the stuff that is released uploaded so good. Yeah, well, this one's going to have that dead space in the middle. But because I was able to get things back on track, I'll be uploading this one. I'll just kind of cringe for that, like 5 minutes where it was black screen. Whoa. Anyway, question. All right. From Sin, favorite Legend of Heroes game if you played any? Yes, of course. I've played them all, in fact. Trails in the Sky FC. Done. That's the best one. Sorry. Some people would say SC. I respect that. Some people would say, well, I don't know if anyone would say Trails the Third was the best. I don't know. You've got two different camps. You've got Cold Steel folks and you got Sky folks. I love Cold Steel. I think Cold Steel is a great story arc. Oh, I think so the series is a slow burn, right? That's just the Legend of Heroes. Like even if you play and I'm blanking on the Japanese name for the arc, but I'm just thinking about the PSP games, the 3 that were released here in the West, which I actually love. Most people hate, whatever. But like, if you look at all Legends of Heroes games dating back decades, like they're all slow burns, right? Like you really have to be willing to put in 20 to 25 hours before the game gets good. Now, a lot of people are like, no. And normally, especially at this point in my life, I'm like, if a game doesn't respect my time, it can go fuck itself. I'm not putting in 25 hours to finally get to the good stuff. Like that's the makings of a bad game, but it works for Trails. I find though that Cold Steel, like it's that person that really likes to hear themselves talk, you know? Like you can tell it's very impressed with itself. And that's my biggest problem with that game. With all of them, really. And I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just 1 and 2 of Cold Steel, because I'm thinking about 3 and 4, and they're less impressed with their ability to weave together an impressive narrative with comprehensive exposition. So Trails in the Sky all day. I'll just say that. That's a long-winded way of answering that question. Though I totally understand if someone's like, yeah, Cold Steel 1, Cold Steel 2, Cold Steel 3, Cold Steel 4, that's my favorite. Like, cool. Right on. Like, I like Cold Steel a lot. Yeah, so Rogue, Tear of Vermilion was mine as well. That was my first Legend Heroes game. And I loved it. I loved it then. I loved it now. It gave me Arc the Lad vibes, if nothing else, just in its aesthetics. And so I was already sort of like bought in just because of that comparison. A lot of people say it's boring. A lot of people dog on the localization. A lot of people say the combat's trash. I don't know. I don't find it any more or less boring than any other Trails game I've played, and I don't find its combat engine to be any less interesting than Trails in the Sky. I mean, like, I don't know. I think all 3 PSP games are good. I actually think they're good. But I'm glad that we've got another Vermilion fan in here. I'm blanking on. I was blanking on Tear of Vermilion as well, but I'm blanking on the 2 other PSP games. So like Trails is not like my series. Like I have like series in my life. Trails is not a series for me. It's a series where I've played all of the games, but it's not a series where I've like gone and like collected. Like it's not a series that I'm displaying back here, right? It's not something where I've like collected specific like merchandise for or anything like that. It's not on the other side of my shelf, and it's not on that shelf over there. Like it's a series that I really enjoy, but like I'm not diehard about it. I still think it's good though. Yeah. Haters gonna hate. That's right. Moonlight Witch. Yeah. So was that the second or third? Was that the second or third Rogue? I know the third had a really, really low print run and it's like impossible to find. I wish I would have kept my physical copies. I got those in college though, so like they're long gone by now. But I think all three of them. No, I think the second and third PSP games fetch a pretty high price on eBay. I think the third one, because of its low print run, like sits at around like $200 or something on eBay, which is brutal. Not to burst your bubble, there's some static in the audio. I better wrap this up then, huh? We're getting to the end anyway. I've been almost on 2 hours. This is craziness. Yeah, Rogue. I remember there was some kind of like weird release order where they released Vermilion first for like a reason that you could tell was made by a bunch of people not connected at the ground level. It was one of those situations, kind of like what I was just talking about. But I couldn't quite remember in what order they were released, and I can't recall the details of why they were released in that order. I just remember it being kind of murky as to which ones you should play first. Anyway, so it's been 2 hours. It's been fun talking with y'all. I had fun answering 40 plus questions and giving you updates on all our projects and encountering some video issues and now apparently audio issues. So I better wrap this up. So thanks everyone for being a part of this, for submitting your questions, silly or serious, for continuing to engage with us and to be part of the LionWing family. It means a lot to set aside 2 hours. A week is a cool opportunity. I really enjoy the show. I really enjoy answering questions, talking with you all, even if it's just about like the Trails series. We do this every week. If this is your first time checking us out, we do this every week. We don't go 2 hours every week, I promise. We're typically around the hour and 15-minute mark. I knew this was going to be a long one, though. Lots to talk about. But we do it every Wednesday. This is our flagship show. It goes down at 9 p.m. ET, obviously on Twitch. But we do have a secondary show called LionWing Plays, which happens Mondays, 9 p.m. ET, on Twitch as well. We're going to be streaming on Sunday, though, because we have the final tournament bracket for Operation Bulletstorm, our gun and gun tournament event that's happening right now. So if you're around Sunday, we're going to be streaming all day with commentary, and then we're going to be putting that up on YouTube the next day and probably also replaying that for LionWing Plays that following night there on Monday. So we've got a couple shows to check out, but thank you for checking out this one, and thank you for checking this one out tonight. Or today if you're watching it tomorrow and it's midday or something. It's been fun. We'll do it again next week. Thank you all again. I'm Bradley Hailstorm, signing off.